Hello and welcome to the oCU. My name is Bonnie.
And I'm Ben.
Welcome back from our Easter break, everyone.
Yeah, now Bonnie, have I got some good news for you tonight from Easter?
Oh, nice. What news?
Well, our glorious leader, Jamie G, has successfully completed his new trick to a very high standard, showing that he is much better than everyone else at such skills, including artists such as Beethoven, Mozart, and Tchaikovsky.
What? Jamie? Seriously?
Yeah, but Bonnie? Yeah. Yes, Jamie.
Yes, I see. He is amazing.
He's amazing. Now, moving on from that, the party don't start till Michael walks in and does his food for thought, which is coming up shortly.
Oh, that's right, Ben. Now, our special guest tonight is the minister of Elim Church here in Stafford. His name is Ian, and he'll be doing a talk based around Study C of the Uncover series, titled You Can Go Home Again.
Yeah, but first, it's that time of the night when we get to put one of our CU members to the test in man versus many new tricks.
Whoa, mate, you're just as awful as you were before Easter, man. I'm sorry.
Well, you expected that, didn't you?
Roll film, please, guys.
Have you ever played the piano before?
A little bit as a child.
We'll see how we go, but we'll aim for sort of grade 8. Cool. Let's start off with a nice, simple thing. So we're going to learn.
Can you not be so close to my face, please?
This is how my piano teacher taught me. You have to learn under pressure, Jamie.
No, what? Why are you here? Why are you here?
Nothing should distract you. Nothing.
Then get out of my face. Why are you here?
Remember, no distractions, Jamie.
Michael, why is he here? And why is he playing the piano better than I am? No, I'm not getting frustrated. I'd agree. I think I'm doing quite well at this.
Okay, I think stage 2 is we're going to go from just learning the notes to feeling the notes.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
But nothing should distract you. You must not even my voice should be distracted.
BAM! No, I can't do it.
You can believe in yourself. Be one with the music. Let the piano be you, and you become one with it. That's all.
Okay. Am I doing well?
You transported me back to the Italian time of the Baroque period. I have to say your Allegro and Andantes are just superb. Touch of diminuendo and your firmant was excellent. Telopsis as well. I loved how you got that in there.
Telopsis?
Yeah.
Isn't Telopsis the Latin name for an owl?
Let's find out. Let's see if I can find the music in here still to kind of, you know, it's
Wait, music? What are you talking about?
Franzlitz in spirit. It's quite a simple piece to learn, really.
That's a lot of dots.
In your own time.
What? I can't even read that, dude.
Oh, okay. Let me play it through. You probably mess that way.
Okay.
We'll have you playing this by the end of the day. Here we go.
No, Michael, there's absolutely no way I can pick this up in just a second lesson.
Well, I did.
Look,
I like to push my students, alright? I think they have the potential.
This is not pushing.
Do you trust me?
Yes.
Give me 1 hour.
1 hour.
1 hour.
What? I'm sorry, what was that?
That
was. I don't know. I mean, that just seemed wrong.
There was a little bit of cheating there. That was rubbish.
Yeah, I mean, there was. I just.
Wow, Jamie G, that was absolutely amazing. That was way better than any Mozart or Beethoven or anyone like that. Anyway, let's cue to the next VT. Food for thought from Michael Barrett.
Now it's time for Food for Thought with Michael. Someone gave me the question today, can God make something which he cannot pick up? The idea, of course, is that he's got God trapped. He's proposing that God can do all things, as Christians often state, so the answer must be he can either create it, in which case God cannot do all things because he cannot pick up the weight, or he can't create it, in which case he also cannot do all things because he can't create it. Therefore, since God can do all things, and we have shown that there are things he cannot do, God can't exist. But let's look at that question a little deeper, and we see that it's not actually logical to begin with. Yes, God is all-powerful, brought the universe into being, created complex organisms and things, but it is also true that God cannot violate his own personal nature, that is, he cannot go against who he naturally is. So, God's nature does not permit him to lie, to not be God. Therefore, the statement that God can do all things is not actually true, and the conclusion raised earlier that God can't exist is also not true. Interesting.
Thank you, Michael. Interesting. Now, in just a few moments, we will bring our guest up on stage so we can mull things over with him, ask a few questions before he delivers his talk.
Thanks, Bonnie. Yeah, so we're here now with Ian, who's the guest speaker tonight. Ian, before we begin, he's from Elim. Before we begin, I've got a couple of quick fire questions for you.
Okay, yeah.
Things you might be asked if you were to arrive, say, as a fresher, you know, like your first day or something like that. So, okay, here we go. Book or film?
Film.
Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Home, as in Ireland, I presume?
Yeah.
Or Stafford?
Has to be home. It has to be Ireland.
Fight Club or Titanic?
Fight Club.
Football or rugby?
We'll go rugby.
Okay. Burgers or pizza?
Ooh, burgers.
PlayStation or Xbox?
Xbox.
Truth or dare?
I have to do truth.
Mornings or evenings?
Definitely evenings.
Red or white wine?
Oh, probably red.
Seafood or Italian?
Definitely Italian.
Stripes or checks?
Checks.
Facebook or Twitter?
Facebook.
Pepsi or Coca-Cola?
Oh, definitely Coca-Cola.
That's the right answer. iPhone or Samsung Galaxy?
Oh, Samsung Galaxy.
Microsoft or Apple?
Microsoft.
SNES or the Sinclair Spectrum?
Oh, brings back memories of Spectrum.
Okay. Internet Explorer or Google Chrome?
Oh, Chrome.
Labour or Tory?
Oh, right. Tory, I think.
Finally, action or rom-com?
Oh, action.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Ian. Yeah, so tonight, what are you talking on?
I'm talking on the parable traditionally known as the prodigal son, but I'm giving it the title of the two lost sons tonight.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, the stage is yours.
Okay.
Take it away.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ian.
Well, tonight we're looking at the latest talk, which is based on what's traditionally known as the story of the prodigal son, or what I want to call it tonight is the story of the two lost sons. And you find it in Luke 15. And the story really is set in the scene where Jesus is teaching, and as he's teaching, he's gathered lots of people around him. Lots of sinners and tax collectors have gathered around Jesus. But there's another group of people that have also gathered around Jesus. And that group of people are the Pharisees and the religious leaders. And they're giving out the fact and moaning that Jesus is actually gathered and teaching with the sinners and tax collectors. So Jesus begins to tell a story, some parables, to deal with the issue that's at hand. And he tells three quick stories. The first one is a story of a shepherd with 100 sheep, and 99 he has, and one gets lost, and he goes out to find the one so that he can save the lost one. The next story is the one of a woman who's got 10 coins and loses a coin, but when she loses her coin, she gathers and searches the whole house until she finds that lost coin, and then has a party to celebrate. But then after she's had that party, she celebrates the fact that she's found her coin and brings her neighbors in and everybody in. And then following that story, we've got the story that we're looking at tonight, the story of the two lost sons. And so the story begins with a younger brother and an older brother. And the younger brother decides that he wants his inheritance. He's fed up waiting for his inheritance, so he approaches the father and says, "Give me my inheritance now. I want it now. Can I have my inheritance?" And the father decides to actually give him his inheritance. Now, those listening might be thinking, well, yeah, that younger brother, that younger son has got what is coming to him, all right, but it's not an inheritance. It's something different that he's got coming to him. But that's not what happens. The father actually sells his property and divides his property, giving 1/3 of it, which would be the right proportion, to his younger son. And then the younger son decides to go and to live a wild life in a far-off country and squanders all his money and squanders all that he has. But that story doesn't finish there, because from that point, there's a famine comes across that land where the younger brother is, and he ends up in hard times, runs out of all his money. And at the end of the story is that he ends up with feeding pigs in a pigsty, and he comes to his senses and thinks, even my father's hired hands, well, they're better off than I am. They're not as lowly as I am. They've got proper food to eat. And he comes to his senses and he thinks, well, I'm going to go back to my father to see if my father will accept me as a hired hand. I realize that I've sinned and I've done wrong, and I'm going to go back and see what will happen. So he comes to his senses and goes back. And we just read a few verses. It's a long story, so I've not read much of it just yet. I've been telling you the story. But as he goes back, we can read in verse 20, it says that while he was still a long way off, his father saw him. But the reading says from verse 20, but while he was still a long way off, his father saw him, was filled with compassion for his son, and he ran to him. He rose and ran to his son. He threw his arms around his son, and he kissed him. And the passage tells us then that the son begins to tell him that he's sorry. He says, Father, I've sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father interrupts and says to his servants, quick, bring the best robe and put it on him. Put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and he is found. So they began to celebrate. So here we have the story of this young brother, this youngest son, who comes back to the father. He's accepted. He's restored into the family. We just see something of God's grace in that, of a father who just loves his son, a father who had been dishonored by his son, a father who had been really discredited really by his son. Imagine you in that position if your son came to you and said, I'm not interested in you, I just want what you have. I just want my inheritance. I don't care about you, I just care about your inheritance. So give me my inheritance. And that's what happened. He took the inheritance and away he went. The last thing he's expecting, that as he returns, that his father is going to embrace him, that his father is going to forgive him, that his father is going to be gracious towards him, that he's going to restore him into the family. He calls for the best robe. Well, the best robe would have been his robe. And so it's significant that he gives him his robe, the best robe. It's a sign that he's been restored. But the story continues, because we haven't dealt with the elder brother. The elder brother's in the fields, and as he returns from the fields, he begins to hear the party and the celebration. He calls the servants, what's happening? What's going on? And then at that point, he hears that his younger brother's returned, and there's a party for him. There's a big celebration going on. But he's not happy. In fact, he's furious. How dare there be a party? He refuses to go into the party. And so much so that the father has to go out to him. And we read something of the story. It says the elder brother, in verse 28, the elder brother became so angry he refused to go in. So his father went out and pleaded with him. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you and have never disobeyed your orders. Yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours, who has squandered your property with prostitutes, comes home, you kill the fattened calf for him. My son, the father said, you're always with me, and everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. Now, what happens? We're not told what happens to the eldest brother. We don't know how he responds to that. But see, in this story, it's not just the younger brother who has dishonored the father. The eldest brother has just dishonored the father also. To refuse to go into the party is really publicly saying, I disagree with what my father's done. I totally go against what he's done. And by making his father come out, well, that's dishonoring him again. He's made the father, the host of this feast, come out of the feast, leave his guests, and come out to the younger brother, his younger son. So he's discredited his father also. He speaks harshly to his father. There's no respect in his voice and his tone. And yet, the father pleads with him also. The father's gracious with him and says, you come in too. I had to. My younger son was dead and is alive again. I had to throw a party. But you come too. You're welcome into the feast also. And in this we see something of the cost. Well, why did the eldest brother get so angry? Was it because of the price of the feast? Well, actually, it's more than just the price of the feast. Because for the father to accept the youngest son back again into the family meant that he shared in that family, and all that meant that he was given an inheritance again. And so it was costing the elder brother for the younger brother to be brought back in. So at this point, he's furious. And you might think, well, actually, I can kind of understand. The younger brother squanders. Why should I share my inheritance with him? Why should that happen again? No wonder he's angry. And you can think of those people thinking and watching this, listening to this story from Jesus. You've got the sinners and the tax collectors. Well, they understand because they're the younger brother, and they identify with that. They know they've done wrong. And they can be welcomed by Jesus. But then you've got the Pharisees and the teachers of the religious law, and they're there. But they're the elder brother. And they haven't come into the feast just yet. And what Jesus is saying is they also need Jesus. They also need to be forgiven. And that's shocking for them to hear. Because as far as they're concerned, they're okay with God. They've done all the righteous things. They've done all the good things, just like the older brother. But yet they're caught short. You see, the problem wasn't that he didn't do what was right, this elder brother. The problem was in his heart. There was sin in his heart. And that hasn't been dealt with. And Jesus is saying it's about a heart condition. It's a heart condition. And he's showing us the true cost of sin. He's showing us the true cost of sin. And so in this story, we think about grace, God's grace. God's grace towards us. He lavishes his grace towards us. And invitation, whether you identify with the older brother or the younger brother, whether you're somewhere in between that spectrum of a wild life or doing everything that's right, we all need God's grace. The Bible tells us that even our righteous acts are like filthy rags when compared to God's righteousness and his holiness. So wherever we are in that spectrum, we need God's grace. We need to be forgiven. And the message of the story is, come, the way is open. God's grace is there for all of us. Come to the feast. Come to the party. And we're left with that challenge. Are you going to come to that feast? Are you going to enter into that party?
Thank you very much, Ian, for that.
Thank you, Ian. We'll be hearing from Ian again in just a few moments when we take questions from both the studio audience and you guys online, so get asking. Yeah, now remember you can reach us on Twitter with @TheOnlineCU, on Facebook with /TheOnlineCU, and of course Ask FM too, again with /TheOnlineCU. Yes, so please get in touch as we'll be going back to Ian after the short video from Emmy, one of the church members here in Church Lane.
So my name is Emilia Kapfunde, and I'm a former student at Stafford University. I studied electronic engineering for 5 years until July last year when I graduated. And at present, I'm working at Alstom as a graduate engineer, and I'm on their 2-year graduate development program. I'm a Christian. I grew up in a Christian home, but at the age of about 12 or 13, that's when I made a personal decision to follow Christ, and ever since then I've been growing in my spiritual life. Since I was studying engineering, I really wanted to do an engineering job after I finished uni. And I realized that some people, after they'd finished their degrees, even engineering, would go on maybe to do teaching or other jobs. And I didn't want that. I really wanted to go into the industry and get my hands-on to engineering. After quite a lot of research in the area, what I considered the possible working place for me was Alstom. And I'd heard a lot about Alstom in terms of how the company looks after its employees, its reputation, and how big it is. And I really wanted to work for that company. The Career Advice Center at Stafford University advised me to go on a graduate training program, which I thought was a good idea. And Alstom does offer one of the very competitive ones. I did apply, but during that time we were writing exams, so I had no time to pay particular attention to my CV. So I wasn't really confident after handing in my CV that I would get the place. And then a church colleague approached me and said there was a job going in their department. I explained to them that I wasn't really interested in that. I wanted to be on the graduate training program, but they said to me it was a good start. So I went. And after the interview, I could feel that although I had prepared a lot, I hadn't delivered what I had prepared, and so I had no hope. But to my surprise, I got an email saying the person who interviewed me had actually thought I was more suited for the graduate training program, and therefore they were offering to write a referral letter for the graduate development program. And to me, that was really the hand of God working, because that's what I wanted. And for someone who had just met me for half an hour to be able to say, this is what is best for you, I could only say that was God. And obviously, because of that referral letter, I was called for the interview. More than 500 people applied for the graduate development program, and Alstom only takes 10 people a year. And after going for the first interview, we were 20 of us, and they were holding that over 2 days. So essentially we were 40 of us, and out of the 40 they wanted 10, and I made it. And I can't say it's because I'm super intelligent or anything. It's just God in my life working.
Thank you for sharing that with us, Emmy. Yeah, well, from here on now we'll be hearing more questions from Ian that you guys have posted up online. So stay with us and we'll take you guys up there. And yeah, so up to you guys.
Yeah, remember you can keep getting in touch with us during these questions, but they'll probably be online afterwards, something like that. Ian, over the course of kind of the whole show and certainly during that, we've had a couple of questions in. Okay. Just asking. So first one, what would the parable look like if Jesus was, say, the older brother? If Jesus was in that situation? Okay.
If we were to put Jesus, it's interesting because the previous two parables that Jesus began with in that series. The item that was lost, the sheep or the coin, there was a big search for that which was lost. And it was probably expected of the crowd listening at that time that as Jesus telling this parable, and you have the younger brother goes out and is lost, they would expect there's going to be a big search for this younger brother. And of course, there isn't. And they probably say, oh, well, what's happened? This is different. What's something strange? And then we see later on, the older brother getting upset because of what's happening, and obviously it was going to cost him, and he wasn't prepared to pay that cost, or at least we're left with that impression that he wasn't. We don't know. The door was open. We don't know exactly how he was going to respond. And I think the answer to that would be that just a few chapters on in Luke's Gospel, in Luke 19:10, Jesus says, and really it's what's paraphrased as his mission statement, I've come to seek and save that which is lost. And that sums up Jesus, and it sums up his mission. And I guess if Jesus was the younger brother, it would have been the younger brother, or the older brother's responsibility in that. You think, well, who in that story should have gone to search for what was lost? Well, it was the older brother, not the father. It was the older brother who should have went to search for the lost younger brother. So if Jesus was in that parable, Jesus would have went to search. Jesus has paid the price. Jesus was willing to pay the cost of the younger brother coming back again. In fact, he paid much greater cost. He gave up his life for us. And so that would be a picture of Jesus if he was a true younger brother, which, of course, that's not what we had in the parable. It wasn't a true younger brother in the parable. So I think that's how it would have changed.
Okay. Another question. What are the differences between, say, Catholic, Protestantism, C of E, Baptist, all the different denominations?
Okay, that's a big question. There's lots in that one. I think the best way to try to unpack that is really, I deal with that with two, the Catholicism and the Protestant churches really. And within the Protestant churches, you've really got your CAV, I can't remember all you mentioned, the Baptists, and so because I'm Pentecostal in the midst of that. And we all come under really the Protestant tradition, and then you have the Catholic tradition. And the big difference between them would be Catholicism, and I was brought up under that, would emphasize God's grace, but you have to earn God's grace. So to sum it up would be a gospel of works, really, that you have to earn God's grace. And the Protestant denominations on the whole would be saying, well, no, God's grace is free. We can't earn it. The younger brother here didn't earn God's grace. He didn't deserve God's grace. But he received God's grace, the God being the Father in that story. He received God's grace. And that's really the difference in the emphasis. Now, within the Protestant churches, they would have slight variations, but they would agree on that as a central theme, while having different styles and emphasis on slightly different things. But I think that would be, it would be about God's grace, as I would put it, as the big difference between them. Yeah.
Another question here. Would you consider yourself religious?
Interestingly enough, no, I wouldn't consider myself religious. And people might think that's strange, as I'm a pastor and minister of a church. But no, I don't consider myself religious. Being religious talks about, well, the elder brother was the one who was religious in this story. And he represented the Pharisees. The Pharisees were religious. But it's clear from what Jesus is saying is here that they're actually not saved. Now, they would have went out and done all that was right. There's nothing to suggest that the older brother didn't live a good life, didn't do all the things he claimed to do, and in a sense had the moral high ground, but he still didn't get into the feast. He still had to accept the invitation to the feast, and he hadn't done so. And the Pharisees were at that point where, if they would have repented, they would have said sorry for their sins. The minute they did anything wrong, they would have, repented from that. But so they were religious, but clearly Jesus is saying you're not saved. And it's not about, religion says, I obey, so therefore I should be accepted. And so that's what happened to the older brother. He had obeyed, so he said, well, I should now I deserve. Whereas actually Christianity says, Jesus has accepted me, even though I don't deserve it, so therefore I obey. Okay. And so there's the difference in terms of, I don't consider myself religious. God has done something inside of me, and because of what he has done, well, then I choose to live for him.
Okay. And one final question.
Okay.
Very quickly. We're kind of getting on.
Okay.
Very shortly. Why are you a Christian? What made you become, or what brings you to here now? Like a very short testimony.
Well, I was brought up with a faith.
Yeah.
I could talk for an hour really on that one. So very quickly, that's very hard. But I was brought up believing in God. I think you've recorded my testimony elsewhere, but since that I've examined the Christian faith. It's not a blind faith. I'm not just believing for the sake of believing. I'm not believing because my parents believed. I'm believing because I've examined. And the thing that sets Christianity apart is not just the fact that Jesus died for my sins and that God's grace did that, but actually he rose again. We've just passed Easter a week ago, and we celebrate the fact that Jesus rose again. And the fact that Jesus rose again sets Christianity apart from all other faiths. And without the resurrection, well, then actually Christianity isn't any different than anything else. But because Jesus died and rose again, and I've known him in my life, I've known God in my life, I've seen answered prayer, I've known Jesus walking with me, I've experienced God in that sense. Well, then I have a deep assurance within my heart, my life, that Christianity is true, that Jesus, what he says, is true, and I live for him.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Ian's full testimony is on our YouTube channel, and you can check it out after the show over on YouTube. We'll put links up on there. Over to Bonnie. Thank you, Ian.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ian, and thank you all for watching. We really hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, now remember, as we said earlier, we'd love to hear your feedback of what you thought of tonight's show.
Yep. So if you have any questions or anything about tonight, just keep posting it, and thanks for watching.
Yeah, as always, you stay classy, Stafford.